各位数位时代还有 Meet Global 小聚的朋友们，大家好，我是数位时代的 Entrepreneur in Residence 驻点创业家在 Boston 我是 Jason， 也是前立法委员，然后现在在哈佛大学做访问学者。今天非常高兴跟两位好朋友跟大家聊一聊这个创业界的超级加速器。算是神级的加速器YCombinator 这两位朋友都是鼎鼎有名的，一个是我们台湾矽谷帮其中一个很重要的成员Kevin Lin， 他也是我们这个 Twitch 的 co-founder， 然后另外也是跟他一起共同创办 Twitch， 那已经现在担任 YCombinator CEO 已经有7年时间的Michael Seibel。今天非常感谢他们两个拨空出来，而且特别为我们台湾的这些对 YC 有兴趣的朋友们特别来做一场分享。Actually, upon Michael's request, he's asking everyone to turn on the camera, so both Michael and Kevin can see all your faces. That can make a impression when you guys apply for YC, I guess. Yeah. But let's get started. First of all, thank you, Michael and Kevin, for joining this special session. And I think it's quite nice that we are able to connect and also do a special session for the teams, not only in Taiwan, but those who are watching from Southeast Asia too, particularly on discovering the YCombinator and also kind of share the secret sauce of YCombinator. So why don't we start by Kevin?
Jason, before we start, let's wait for some more cameras to go on. I am horrible.
Let's get at least 50%. See if we can get to at least 50%.
Okay. So everyone turn on your camera. It looks like let's see some faces.
How about this? I'll try a trick. Kevin Lin will invest in your company and YC.
Okay, now this sounds like a airdrop.
Take a screenshot.
Yeah,
there we go.
We are actually recording. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still waiting.
Okay.
Still waiting.
We have more people coming in actually. Yeah. Wow, this quite a few people. Yeah.
Let's
almost
get some cameras.
This is a concert. Michael, this is like a Super Bowl halftime.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and now you've learned
we're almost there.
This lesson about fundraising in the US. That was a lie. No money will be coming. Investors are liars.
It might still happen. It's not impossible.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, I think we're at half. That's pretty good.
Let's do it.
Good. Yeah. So Kevin and Michael, why don't you just both kind of give a brief introduction of yourself? I think a lot of people know who you are, but just a little bit of a kind of a introduction, something more than what they can read on Wikipedia. Yeah.
Hey, let's make this fun. How about I'll do Kevin's introduction and Kevin will do my introduction?
Okay,
go for it.
You want to go first, Kevin? Or you want me to go first?
Yes, I'll take a crack.
Okay.
So Michael Seibel, currently CEO of YC. I don't think that's the exact title you have. I see various titles out there, but he's the chief overlord, managing director of YCombinator. Has been there for quite some time. Really turned it around. Prior to that, Michael's introduction into the tech world was being a founder of Justin TV, co-founder of Justin TV, and ultimately CEO of Justin TV. And from there spawned 2 companies, Social Cam, which Michael spun out as CEO along with 2 of our engineers as an Instagram for video back in the day. This was in 2010, 2011. Sold to Autodesk very shortly thereafter, after growing rapidly. Particularly via Facebook user acquisition, and also co-founder of Twitch, which Kevin became a co-founder of after being part of Justin TV. Michael is the ultimate founder, supporter, hero, champion, and in his role at YC has grown YC from, I don't remember the exact numbers when you started, but I believe, less than 100 per batch to now nearly 500 companies per batch, increasingly global, and has spent a lot of time internationalizing Y Combinator. In his spare time is an Michelin star chef and former football player.
All right.
I'm gonna put all that into the Wikipedia. Yeah.
So
go
Kevin
ahead,
Lin. Kevin Lin, born and raised in Louisiana, went to an amazing magnet school that taught him some important and non-important lessons in life that he continued. We met in college where he studied bugs. I think it was bugs. There's like a fancy name for studying
Various
bugs.
Creatures. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And had a great collection of bugs, and we became good friends. As a side note, one of the few kind of dangerous on the street situations that I've ever been in New Haven was because Kevin wrangled me into doing some illegal deed. When we started, questionable deed, it was illegal too, questionable and illegal. When we started Justin TV, there was one night where it was my job to produce the complete financials for the company because we were going to fundraise. And I realized that I was both a horrible Excel user and not up to this task. And I called Kevin, and he graciously called out of work and came to the company and helped us organize all of our finances, which took 2 days. And on the third day, we basically begged him to join the company, which thankfully he accepted. And then Kevin was kind of one of the main two people, in addition with Emmett, in figuring out how to make Twitch and make Twitch work. He actually did the thing that we didn't do for about 4 years at Justin TV, which is talk to our users. Turns out it was good advice. And since then, he's become an international business development man of mystery. He is the most networked human on earth that I've met. He's invested in a whole bunch of companies. He worked alongside me for 2 batches at YC and is now working on a new gaming startup.
Thank you.
Who come up with the name Twitch? And tell us about the name Twitch. How does it come about?
Yeah, it took quite some time. So we did everything from just looking through names that we liked that were related to video games, and actually Bill, who was our first engineer hire at Justin TV, who built our chat system, actually built a domain crawler. Our criteria were it must be a single syllable pronounceable word, which means there must be roughly a vowel in the middle of somewhere, or at the end or the beginning. And we found all these different websites that were available. One, namely Zarth, came up. Zarth.com was purchasable. We looked up the word on Urban Dictionary, and there actually was a definition for it, which meant I think it was defined as like the ultimate state of being awesome or something like that. That almost became our name. Unfortunately, it is unspellable and like not really that well pronounceable. And so Emmett basically was like, look, guys, we have to come up with a name or else we're just going to call it Zarth. And so we're like racking our brains, like, please let's not name the company Zarth. Actually, like, it would just be horrible if we did so. And Twitch, the word Twitch came up a couple of times in various contexts, but the primary context that was sort of an excuse for a story is fast twitch muscles, which are important for video gamers. We were very focused on esports at the time. So when we were still Justin TV, we called it Justin TV Gaming. And so we're thinking, okay, well, we came up with other bad brands like Battlecast that were just way too competitive gaming focused. And we realized we needed to make a sort of a neutral home, an empty word that we could fill. And Twitch kept kind of sticking out. We couldn't buy Twitch.com. We tried to buy it. The guy basically told us that Evan from Twitter tried to buy it before and he wanted like $700,000 for it. And I was calling him at the time saying, hey, I've got a nice, warm $10,000 for you. That's all we can afford. And so we ended up not being able to buy it. However, the .tv domain was available. So we purchased it, kind of noodled on it for a little bit. Everyone liked it. Jacob, our designer, first employee at Justin TV, ended up mocking up a little logo, which was more like a, I don't know, heavy metal space logo before the sort of more retro logo you see today. And we fell in love with it and went out with it. But it was like a multiple month-long process and late nights in the office, lots of tequila, trying to figure out what this brand could be.
Great story. Yeah, I think that really resonates with I think a lot of gaming community that the name Twitch really kind of stick with it and really produce the culture of gaming as well, and certainly kind of grow on people when they start hearing it and thinking about it and use it. Great name. It's actually also a good story how startup should name itself. Yeah. So let's sort of get into YC. So Michael, tell us about Y Combinator and how you got involved, and what's your vision under your stewardship, and how does it work in general? Yeah.
That's a lot of questions. Which one of those do you want me to tackle first?
All of it. Yeah.
All of it. Oh God. Okay. All right. I'll try to do it quickly. So I was a YC founder in 2 batches. Mm-hmm. The winter 2007 batch and the winter 2012 batch. And what really impressed me about YC was something that was very simple. The typical path for funding for most startups require you to be well networked and well credentialed. And typically back then excluded technical people and rewarded people with like business degrees. And I thought that not only didn't make sense, because, you know, tech companies are built by people who write code, but it didn't really reflect the future. And so it was amazing being in YC because I was around all of these really intelligent people who couldn't just talk a good game, but could actually build product. And what was fun is that I got the opportunity in 2013 after SocialCam sold to work as a part-time partner at YC and see how it worked from the inside. And it just became more and more clear that this model of funding companies, of putting them in a batch with one another so they can actually learn from each other, allowing them to sell to one another, giving them leverage by having a demo day so they could raise more money at higher prices than they could raise alone. And basically, YC was doing all of these things to give strong technical founders an advantage. And without YC, I saw a lot of people basically getting taken advantage of by investors who knew the game and knew how to exploit founders who were first-time founders. And so when I had a chance to join up, I decided to do so. You know, I went to school at Yale with Kevin. We were there when Yale had its 300th anniversary. And, you know, one of the things I realized was that, you know, educational institutions and quasi-institutional institutions have the potential to do a lot of good for a lot of people and survive for a really long time. One of the counterintuitive things about YC is that I actually think it can last longer and be stronger than any company that we fund, because the problem of helping strong people start companies doesn't go away. Whereas like a lot of problems over time do go away. And so I decided to take a bigger leadership role because YC had to really shift from being a family business to being run more like a company if it was going to survive for the next 100 years. And so, you know, it became my personal goal to make sure that YC survived and thrived for 100 plus years, and also internationalized. So now the typical YC batch is over 50% companies from outside the United States, which has been really exciting to see as well.
How many teams applying per year, and how many teams end up getting in, and also from what countries or number of countries that you know?
17,000 companies apply every 6 months to Y Combinator. Wow. About 2.3% or around 400 companies are accepted.
That's like harder than trying to get into Harvard or Stanford or Yale combined.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about, well, I do know about Stanford. Those places aren't that good, so it doesn't surprise me. I know about Yale, it's not that good either. So yeah, like put another way, I think one of the things you might be surprised about most educational institutions is that like, they aren't that good. Like they're exclusive for dumb reasons. You know, I went to a pretty good suburban school in New Jersey. I would say like the top 30 kids in my graduating class could have been at Yale, and like 3 of them got in. It wasn't because we were better. It was because Yale has not figured out how to scale to match the number of smart kids that it could serve. one of the things that we are really careful about Y Combinator is that we want to make sure that YC does scale to accommodate the best folks. If more really good people apply, we figure out how to serve more of them. And so,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now turn to you, Kevin. You've been a very successful entrepreneur and now an investor. And you've also worked with YC companies and advised YC companies and founders. So tell us a little bit about your experience and what do you see as in the companies that sort of grown out of YC? And I remember during the COVID period, you had mentioned to me that YC had started calling for companies or startup founders to build solutions for COVID pandemic. And that's been really extraordinary for a incubator to think really ahead of its time and really build stuff for the current situation that's continuously evolving. So tell us a little bit about your experience with YC and what's it like?
Sure. So, I mean, I think at the core, YC works because it has a lot of brilliant and good people as part of the team, as the mentor group. And I say good because it makes a big difference. There's more and more investors in the market these days. It's very easy to raise money with even just a little bit of credits in your resume, and a lot of people do it for the short term. They do it for quick returns for LPs, and they try to influence companies to make moves that are pretty counter sometimes to what founders actually want to do. A lot of the good founders want to build long-term, build something that's impactful, and YC is really good at surfacing that from people, and it takes the people there to do so. So your example, during the COVID pandemic, there was a call to action that said, hey, a lot of smart founders in this industry, frankly, a lot that haven't really found product market fit, haven't really found exactly what they want to build yet, maybe even a problem or a passion that they're really focused on yet. And so, hey, why don't you give it a shot? This is a global pandemic. It's a really important time for us as a larger global community as YC to find a good way to influence things positively, and move things in a direction where we can solve for this pandemic. And that's multiple solves, right? That's not just solving for the disease itself, the mitigation of the disease itself, but also the problems, the psychological problems that people will face and the tools that they will need to stay connected with each other. And that's just, not everyone did that. Not every group really thinks that way. And YC is sort of this like silent power behind a lot of founders that are the sort of frontline impact on the world. But I would say, in general, YC, and I didn't go through this, right, as a founder. I became a co-founder later of Twitch, but I didn't go through the actual batch process. I saw 2 batches. Michael was nice enough to ask me to join as a visiting partner, and I saw both COVID batches: the first batch that ended in COVID, and the second batch that started completely remote as a result of COVID. And saw that the system that they've built, which is simultaneously like a school and an expanded mentorship program, and obviously at the core funding system that helps founders get off the ground comfortably with real resources, and obviously the extended YC network, both peer mentorship and customers, suddenly turned into this product that could really scale even faster. And help more people around the world even faster, and really remove any geographical border restrictions from this process of learning and being sort of thrown into this pressure cooker and figuring out how to build a product and get customers as quickly as possible. This was really incredible to see. But I think at the core, it really is the people you see at the beginning of the batch 10 weeks later are completely transformed, if they want to be. Not everybody wants to be, right? YC does their best to pick the best possible founders who are both smart and maybe experienced, maybe networked, maybe already have some amount of resources. But in general, they're quite young. They're recently out of college, if not fresh out of college. They don't really know what the world's like. And YC teaches you that incredibly quickly, and teaches you all the core experiences you need. Like Michael mentioned, talking to customers was not something we did for the first couple of years. And it was not until we really learned how to do that in a way that was not biased, right? Confirmation bias from a lot of founders is a major issue. They think they know everything that the customer wants, they don't. And so learning that, even that seemingly simple thing, is something that they teach you how to do. And so that 10-week pressure chamber really transforms you from, a sort of innocent, naive human into someone who's well armed, at least at the end, to not only raise money, but also understand how to build a business.
Are you currently advising any YC companies, Kevin?
A lot still. Yes, I've invested in many. One of the first things I did when I had money after our acquisition was invest in several YC companies, thanks to Michael and Justin and Emmett's suggestion for the most part, and some of my own, minor research, and still keep in touch with a lot of them. I probably still spend 15, 20 hours a week. I'm actually trying to reduce this because now I have a company to run, but a decent amount of time, especially these days. I think what people come to me for help for the most is fundraising. Right, have reviewed a lot of pitch decks, not nearly as many as Michael, but have reviewed a lot of pitch decks, and kept in touch with a lot of investors, VCs, individuals, and so on around the world. So I generally help with that.
Yeah, that's great. Also, Michael, YC was started by PG, Paul Graham, and he sort of epitomized the Silicon Valley culture of kind of this startup, can do it, and then kind of don't take no for answer attitude. How much is still PG's influence on the YC today, and also how is YC transformed over the years as it sort of start to gain global traction and global recognition?
So I think one of the things that PG did that a lot of people didn't realize is that by advising so many companies, he basically started to figure out what were the best practices of the companies that succeeded and what were the worst practices of the companies that failed. And so like the essays that you might read from PG, like do things that don't scale, for example, this wasn't like a thought that he originally had. He actually was a thought that he formed after observing a bunch of companies succeed and looking at how they did it. I think that tradition is basically embedded inside of YC. And so much of the content that we create is not based on our personal founder experience at all. If you think about it, I think YC has funded, like close to 4,000 companies. I think we've funded like over 2,500 of them since I've been there. And so think about how many data points that is. Like think about how many company paths. Suddenly patterns start to emerge. And one of the fun things that we do inside of YC that isn't really actually shared is we have this thing called a user manual. And almost all of Paul Graham's original advice was written down in this YC founder user manual. It was about 5 pages long. Now the user manual is about 100 pages long. And it basically has the collective learning of all of the partners that have gone through YC and have helped founders of YC for 16 plus years. So I think that was kind of the tradition. It wasn't so much the advice as the process of trying to learn from the people who came through the program and then teach the next generation the best lessons from those who came before them.
So this is a good place to sort of get into the culture part of the YC. YC produced some of the most successful unicorns like Airbnb and Dropbox and etc. You sort of mentioned some of this soft skills or soft power side of things about YC. And to me, it's very much about the culture that's kind of differentiates YC from other, accelerator or incubators. So would you, if you were to name 3 things or 3 principles of the YC's culture, what would they be? Or if even just 1 or 2 things, what would they be?
I mean, one of our mottos is talk to users and write code. I think it's really easy to get distracted with everything else that's going on in the startups. And fundamentally, the best founders are disciplined and they don't let themselves be distracted. I think the second one, which sounds obvious when I say it out loud, is build something people want. So many founders don't bother to really talk to their users and figure out, do they like the product that they built? Did it actually solve a problem for them? They're obsessed with their fundraising deck, or they're obsessed with the advisor they can't meet, or with the article they want to get in the newspaper, but they can't even bother to talk to their user and figure out if they're actually solving their user's problem. And then I think the third thing, which is a subtle point, is this thing is really, really, really hard. It will take a lot longer than you think to be successful. And having peers around you that can support you emotionally gives you a massive advantage. You know, most founders, when they raise money, they just have that relationship with the investor. They don't get relationships with other founders going through the same problem. It's almost like going to college, but only being able to talk to your professors and not interact with any other students. That would be a really shitty experience.
Yeah.
And so with YC, folks can learn from each other, but more importantly, they can just emotionally support each other, because like this shit is hard. I mean, I can't tell you how many times Justin TV almost died, right? I mean, so many times. And like some of the things that kept it together was like we were all friends and we had other friends doing startups, and we kind of figured if they could make it, we could make it. People don't talk about that enough. You know, I think a lot of people will think that the story of Twitch is a story of like smart people executing good strategy. That's like false.
We had no idea what we were doing.
No idea. And we only look smart in hindsight. Like in the moment, we did not look smart at all.
The anxiety and the stress is constant, right? The fear of death, the fear of doing the wrong thing, the fear of building the wrong product and making the wrong decision is constant. And that's real, like that. And it takes coaching, like, you know, a lot of us had coaches, a lot of us had therapists, like there's all this stuff going on in the background, in addition to the peers that Michael mentioned, and the sort of unassuming mentor, the unknown mentors, right? People in the games, in my case, the games industry folks that were kind of telling us constantly how they felt about us in subtle and not so subtle ways. Like some people were like, we hate you, we want you to die, and we don't think you belong in this ecosystem. And some people were like, we kind of know what you're doing and you seem like cool people, so how about you like listen to our feedback and take it for what it is. Like there's all this stuff going on in the background that the sheen of, oh cool, it's like must have been super easy. They raised all this money. We pitched 83 venture capitalists in 2011 to 2012. When we launched, we were the fastest growing website on the internet for at least a year. And we had, yet we had to pitch 83 people to get one check.
Yeah, this shit is like crazy. To be honest, most of what you're reading in most of the pop culture places, like in the news or on Twitter, like most of the stuff that your friends are talking about startups, like it's all not true. Like it's all like you know,
it's all made up.
It's all made up. Yeah. Like I even remember we had a meeting in the early days of Justin TV where we were going to invent the new founding story. Like, oh, the founding story we have isn't good enough. Like we need something sexier for the press. And like, that's what people like read. Like they read that and they think that stuff's true. So like, that's actually another hidden advantage of YC. We invite speakers in and off the record, they tell you what their startups are really like. And people are often very surprised.
Yeah, that's really kind of behind the scene, the true story of the startup. And I remember watching, I think it was a Netflix about just the show Silicon Valley, and kind of founding teams almost kill each other and driving each other nuts. But it's extraordinary experience. Now turn to Kevin. You've been living in Taiwan for how long now? Off and on altogether for
a little over a year. Yep.
Yeah. So tell us about your observation of Taiwan startups, its strength and weakness. What do you see, and what can be done to improve the overall ecosystem, and sort of also kind of give the entrepreneurs or startups listening online today some advice as well.
Sure. So for a little further context, I've been coming to Taiwan for work for the last 10 years for Twitch. Twitch was our first office in Asia. It was our top 5 country, one of the most engaged countries on the planet for Twitch. A lot of people love watching people play video games here. And so we did a lot of research out here and came out here to meet with folks. So I met with a lot of startups along the way. I'd say it is shifting, but I'll give you some rough high levels. One is, like Michael said, the unfortunate reality is the investor pool here is, in my opinion, somewhat abusive. They take roughly 40 to 50% for a very small check. It's not a large enough check, usually $100,000, $200,000. It's enough for a small team, but it's not enough to really build out a core initial founding team. And they want too much share. And so at a certain point, you go raise another round and you're at risk of losing 50% of your business. It's pretty demoralizing. And then at that point, you may not even have had product market fit yet. I think that's changing. I do see investors kind of coming in now that have a little bit more stomach for a lower, basically a slightly higher valuation, lower percentage, and can actually help on mentorship side. The second thing is talking to users. A lot of folks here don't really talk to users around the world. They might talk to users in Taiwan. Taiwan is a great starter market, is a great test market. I think Taiwan users are quite opinionated in my experience and have good feedback, but they're not necessarily reflective of the larger population. And so you have to pick a place. I think historically, Taiwanese startups were encouraged to try to go to China, which was a losing battle, right? They'll out-resource you, they'll out-tech you, they'll out-build you, or they'll just regulate you out. And so I think for a solid 5 years, if not longer, companies were attempting to do this naturally. You know, the language obviously overlaps. It wasn't working. And so you have to look to other markets, whether that's the West or Southeast Asia, which increasingly companies here are looking at, which is positive. Beyond that, I think the talent here, like everywhere else, is very good, is excellent. I think it's as good as, in many categories, better than talent across the globe. It is a capital efficient market. It is just cheaper to hire people here, which is an advantage for now. That advantage often doesn't last very long, but it is such a gap that I think founders here who can raise meaningful capital, likely from external markets, can, at least from an employee standpoint, outcompete on cost, which increases runway. But it's really about thinking bigger. I think from the founders here, it's really thinking about global. Everyone says this, every major accelerator. I know Jamie Lin from AppWorks and Edgar from Spark Labs harp on this point a lot. It's just really thinking about how do you build global businesses? And that requires mentorship, in addition to a peer network that pressures you to do so, like Michael mentioned. Having that peer pressure, seeing peers succeed when you're not, is a great motivator. But having mentors that can teach you and translate that knowledge to you and push you to do things that are maybe unnatural to you just based on their own experience is not really here, unfortunately. There are great companies that have been built here, TSMC being the most notable, but HTC, Acer, Asus, all these hardware companies most generally, that have great business people who have the experience that you get from being part of a community like YC, of the trials and tribulations, the errors, the regrets, and like the learnings. They're here, but they're not really that engaged in my experience for some reason or another. Maybe because they don't think about software that much and think software is a totally different category of business when you can learn the basic business stuff from any entrepreneur. Really. All the ingredients are here, but for some reason they just haven't collided in a way that an organization and community like YC has, or even Silicon Valley as a broader community, just not really there, right? The peers, the mentors, the global thinking, the resources, the money, the reasonable investors. It's all kind of starting to happen here. It's feeling really good lately, actually, particularly with the move into Web3. I think that's reinvigorated people here. I think that people feel like there's like a new equal playing field to start from.
Yeah, that's really good observation, and also I think really encouraging for the folks that who are listening to also to be even bolder and to be even stronger in pursuing their goals. Now, Michael, I remember when we were in San Francisco the night before I got on the flight to Boston, we were discussing about Taiwan's teams in the YC. And you were just really quickly you pulled up your phone and look at spreadsheets, and actually there's only a few teams from Taiwan, and so tell us, what exactly does it take to get into YC, and how Taiwan has a high quality, reliable, and actually relatively cheap engineers compared to Silicon Valley. Do you also see more YC companies start hiring from Taiwan, and how can we encourage that?
The number one reason why companies don't get into YC is because they don't apply. The number of founders who psych themselves out and they think that like they don't deserve it, or it's too hard, or like they're not good enough, is massive. And, you know, one of the interesting things here is like, it's pretty simple. Building a successful company is almost impossible. You have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, right, and you don't take opportunities as they come, and other people do, they'll win. It's that simple. So we don't get nearly as many Taiwanese applicants as we should. According to my records, we have exactly one Taiwanese company, and that's crazy considering the amount of talent that's in Taiwan. But that's not my fault. Like, we have an open application. We fund companies in 40 plus countries around the world. I've done office hours with companies in almost every time zone in the last 30 days. It's your fault. Like, either you are going to be part of building the next generation of great tech companies, or you're just going to be users of them. You all decide.
I'll add two thoughts.
Yeah,
that's
please.
okay.
Yeah.
One is ask for help. As I think one of my learning from college too, and it sounds like Michael's experience a little bit as well, is, you know, what I saw in college was this network, this like old school network of people. I met a lot of these kids who were, you know, kind of privileged and were able to get in. And in college, the one thing I really took away was a network. My brother, my parents were like, look, if nothing else, I hated studying. And so like, if you're not going to do anything else, go do extracurriculars and meet as many people as possible. And it was really great advice. You don't necessarily have that advantage here in Taiwan, right? I find, you know, a lot of folks haven't really spent much time in Taiwan, but there are people here who are willing to help. And one of my personal goals is to get more Taiwanese companies into YC. And we're thinking of, we have all these thoughts with a bunch of former entrepreneurs that have moved here on thinking, how do we help accelerate that process? And so ask for help, right? There are people here who can help you think about how your application, what problem to tackle, and you know, how to actually write an application. There are people that are willing to help you. And if it's not one of us or any other people, it's your friends. They can help you make sure you write something that's interesting and is easy to read. The second thing is hardware is okay. Like hardware, like so many people train here on hardware. It's not that YC doesn't do hardware companies, they do. And so I think there may be a little bit of a misperception here from founders I've talked to that said, oh, well, we do hardware, like does YC even do hardware? It seems like they're mostly software. And in fact, another misperception is it's largely enterprise. There's plenty of great consumer companies that have come out of YC, plenty of great everything, sustainable energy, like they invest in everything. And so I think there's some marketing here that we need to do around YC to change that perception. But Taiwan, especially powerful at hardware. YC does like hardware. Just make that really crystal clear.
Yeah, I think for all of you listening or watching, I think this is really encouraging. And actually, you know, fire up the website and start the applications. Yeah, actually, you know, we need to get more teams into YC and also. You know, get more YC companies to look at hiring from Taiwan as well. You know, all these Taiwanese talented engineers, you know, can really contribute. So this is great. Kevin, you now also, you know, back to the entrepreneurial roots and also starting a new company called Meta Theory. I love the name. It's a little bit geeky, but also philosophical. Tell us about Meta Theory.
Yeah, sure. So we're a Web3 game company. One of the learnings I had coming back to Taiwan, I've been dipping in and out of crypto for a long time. Actually, one of our co-founders, Kyle, who built Cruise Automation, ultimately used to mine for Bitcoin in the office back in 2011 with our old servers. So kind of always on periphery, never really jumped in. And after being here in Taiwan since last November 2020, met a lot of crypto people that were hiding out here from COVID. And started to get interested, started to realize like the influence that I wouldn't say crypto, even just blockchain at the core technology level, what that meant for the potential future of the internet, and decided to jump in. Always wanted to build a game, wanted to make content, and so decided to start this journey again. I think the other thing that's very appealing about Web3 gaming is it is a continuation of the work we did at Twitch, which was to help people make money playing video games originally, help this new generation of creators, this new category of creators earn revenue directly from the audience. This is now an even more direct money route for players of games. You just literally have to play the game, and you can earn revenue, earn income by just playing without having to create content. So that's appealing, right? That's appealing. And so a lot of the Web3 promise that's interesting in my mind, which is somewhat hopeful and maybe overly philosophical, is it can mean a little bit of a redistribution of wealth around the world, right? Where what's happening today in a game, the best example is a game called Axie Infinity, where people in the Philippines and Brazil and Indonesia were able to make more than minimum wage playing a video game for less hours than it took to make that minimum wage amount, which was in the Philippines, as an example, $200 a month, 200 USD a month. So what is that? Roughly 6,000 NT per month. They were making more than that playing this game. And the buyers, the people who were purchasing the results of the gameplay, were from Korea, the West, Europe, US. And so you were sort of optimizing for this global economy of people who wanted something and people who were willing to grind, basically, to spend time to build. And that's a lot of game economies are like that, right? But now it's actually tied to the real world, which is really interesting, very complicated. But that's why we decided to go into this world.
Michael, is Web3 or GameFi a big theme in the YC now? I bet it is.
Well, I mean, we funded a company called Coinbase, which is pretty good.
Of course.
And then we funded another company called OpenSea, which seems to be in the mix right now as well. So we definitely look at Web3 companies. I would say that what I find most interesting about Web3 often comes from international founders. So
interesting.
Things that I've really seen, like if you ask me what excites me at Web3, I think that gaming is very exciting. But I think even more exciting is there are a lot of people around the world who live in countries where saving money in their local currency is often punished. Where when you save money, your government does some stupid thing or has a bad economic policy or something horrible happens, your currency gets devalued and the money you saved is worthless. And one of the potentials of Web3 is to give everyone a bank account with a stable currency that doesn't devalue if their government acts like an idiot. And one of the interesting things I find in general at YC more and more is how many of the ideas that are going to move the world forward are coming from founders who are living in developing countries who are encountering real problems. One of the things that I find slightly disheartening about interacting with US founders is that a lot of the problems are solved in the US, and US founders love to hate on the United States, but we have a stable currency, we have good infrastructure, like we have good banking, like we have all these things. But there are a lot of people who live in places that don't have these services. And what I think about Web3 is the power to kind of distribute first world services globally at a low cost. And, starting with first world financial services. And, man, I hate when I say it that way because it sounds so stupid, right? If you're a taxi driver working in Nigeria and you can save money in USD stablecoin, the next time that Nigeria's currency devalues by 90%, you're safe. And like that can really impact people's lives. And so a lot of the time, kind of, exactly in line with what Kevin said, like, I think about how Web3 can help the next 1 billion, 2 billion people who want to enter the middle class and help deliver them services that traditional businesses don't seem to be able to do. What I'm less interested in is people who are looking to do Web3 to make money. Like there's a lot of people who kind of came off the Robinhood, I want to trade stocks in like 2020 world, and who are finding, Web3 is their next place to get rich quick. I think it's fine. Like I have no problem getting rich, but like I just wish people were kind of honest. They're like, if you want to get rich, that's fine. If you want to get rich and change the world and build services that can empower people, you're a little insulted when people who just want to get rich are like saying, oh yeah, we're on this all same community together. And the people who just kind of want to get rich are exploiting a moment in time where it's easy for some people, but they're not really changing the world. And in my experience, and Kevin, you and I know a lot of rich people, like rich people who don't feel like they're making a world a better place, they tend to not be very happy. They tend to get involved in drugs and alcohol and other things to kind of compensate. And, you know, hey, I'd rather be a rich person drinking a little too much than a very, very poor person. Don't get me wrong. But like, they don't have to be. Like, they could be trying to make the world a better place. And so, yeah, that's the only thing that's the only knock I have on Web3 is I think that it's right now attracting, you know, the scenesters and the bankers a little too much, and the builders are getting drowned out, unfortunately. But the builders will stick. The scenesters always leave. The builders never leave. So I'm not worried. We're still excited by the space.
There's a lot of junk, and as Michael said, a lot of people are just fast followers. They're chasers, and unfortunately, a lot of the examples in crypto, in Web3, in crypto in particular, were very abusive. They're just Ponzi schemes. And we look at games all the time. I've probably met now 50 game companies just sharing notes. People are really nice in the industry and they're good about sharing notes, but no one knows what they're doing. I mean, for the most part, they just follow this one model that is kind of working, and then they replicate it with the aim of making money fast. And it's just it's not interesting for us. It's not interesting from, you know, a long-term ecosystem build perspective. And so for all of you out there, like, don't just chase what other people are doing. To come up with a good idea, come up with a good problem to solve that is meaningful, that is scalable. I think there's too much of that. And in a nascent community like Taiwan, I think there is a real risk there of people kind of just, oh, this is working here, this looks good, let's just copy that, or maybe make a slight iteration on it. Maybe that's good, but you should make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and that you're thinking long term. Well, so one other quick thing I'll add, as something Michael said, made me think of this, to back to the earlier question about sort of the Taiwan local ecosystem. I find that a lot of people here, this is by proxy of the issue with funding, but you can't do it on the side. If you're a first-time founder, especially, you just can't do this on the side. You have to quit your job. You have to find a way to raise money. You have to find a founding team around you that you trust, that you will go through thick and thin, that you will debate with and argue with and come to the right conclusions. That was an interesting sound. I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, the point is, not a side hustle. Too many people in Taiwan try to do things as a side hustle, and you can't do that. You have to commit.
You know, before I get into the next question, I just wanted to shout out to everyone listening that if you have a question, feel free just to post it on the chat room. Both Michael and Kevin will see them, and then they can answer them. So Kevin, the fact that you are in Taiwan, I think says a lot about how innovation is distributed and how today's innovation is also decentralized. And also from my observation in the States, also becoming a trend where people are start to dispersing out of San Francisco Bay Area, you know, moving to Seattle or, you know, Austin, Texas, or, you know, some other cities. So question to you, Michael, do you feel San Francisco is becoming less and less conducive for startups to create companies, and on the flip side of the coin, it's actually good for international companies to apply for YC, because then it means that it opens up for other teams around the world as well?
You know, I think that it's really easy to think about the startup world as a zero-sum game, and that if like something has to be removed for something to take away. I would argue that still most of the smart people who want to do startups in the United States try to figure out a way to either get to San Francisco or take something away from San Francisco. I think that what COVID has done has made more people around the world feel like they can access the Silicon Valley ecosystem without being here. That's very conceptual. So let me say that for real. Investors in Silicon Valley pay the highest prices. Investors in Silicon Valley now take investor meetings on Zoom. Like, you want a small change that's actually a radically large change, you can be in Taipei and you can pitch a San Francisco or Silicon Valley investor without flying. 3 years ago, that was false. Like, that wasn't true. Today, 95% of the investment pitches that YC founders are doing are on Zoom. No YC founder travels to San Francisco for YC demo day. The demo day is on Zoom. All the meetings.
Have you written a check without meeting the founder in person?
Are you kidding me? Every single
check.
company.
Every check.
Wow, that's
every
crazy.
Single company that's done YC in the last 4 batches, we've invested in without meeting in person. Yeah.
And these are 10-minute interviews, by the way.
Yeah. I told you, American investors are crazy. And so literally, and so to me, what COVID has really done is expanded the number of people who can participate in the startup ecosystem. It's helped make it global, but that's not a shrinking impact. It's a pure growth impact. You know, it's not a surprise that 50% of companies are in YC or international. That was driven by COVID bringing everything online and on Zoom. I've been to Taipei twice in my life, but we wouldn't be doing this talk today in person. I've got a newborn kid who's going to be born in like a month. Like, it's the middle of a YC.
Congratulations.
But like, because of Zoom, because of how the ecosystem has changed in the last 2 years, because of COVID, to be honest, like, we're all talking. So to me, like, that's the exciting part about this whole game, is that like, now San Francisco and the Bay Area is available to everyone. And like, there's no excuses. There's something that you can borrow from the ecosystem.
Absolutely. We have a question from Subham to Michael. He says, Michael, we are an early stage startup. Our potential users are US students. So what should be the strategy for distribution and reaching out to these people? Michael, you want to take a quick jab on that?
Yeah, I mean, the basic YC strategy that most founders don't want to embrace is that you actually have to start by doing things that don't scale. One of the secret advantages of a lot of large startup companies that did YC today was how many small, non-repeatable things they did when they were early. So if you really want to get some college kids in, instead of figuring out how to get 100 or 1,000 college kids or 1 million college kids to use your product, figure out how to get 10. And if you're trying to get 10, that becomes a lot easier to think about. You can email 10, you can message 10, like, you probably are friends of 10 college students. Now, the worst founders will say that there's no way I can go from 10 to the 1 million that I need to build a great company. And those are the worst founders because they don't actually study their history. Everyone started with 10. Like, I remember when Justin had 10 viewers on Justin TV, right? Twitch started with 10. So there is like no cheating here. Like, if you can't get 10, then this is probably not something that you really want to do. But if you really enjoy it, you're going to love that 10 people like your product. And then you'll figure out how to get 20. And then you'll figure out how to get 40. And I think that if you can have faith that you're delivering 10 value, you get the right to get another 10. But all too often, that's not the message people want to hear. What this question is way more often, Michael, how do I get 1 million? And I reverse that and say, why do you deserve 1 million? Is your product worthy of 1 million people yet? Well, the way you prove that is like, show me the 10 people who love it. And I'm willing to bet at somewhere between 10 and 1,000 people who love it, who use a product multiple hours a day, getting to 1 million won't be your problem.
Cool. Also, someone from the audience, Kirk, I think at this one, Kevin, maybe you can reply. Basically, it's a podcast hosting company, and he's asking what do you think about creators economy and as Twitch founders basically creating a tech company like us to empower creators?
Yeah, first of all, Kirk, congrats on applying. Sorry you didn't make it in. Don't give up. On creator economy, yeah, it's a fascinating space. And every year you see new technology that's largely in the tool space, right? I haven't really seen any major play that's trying to do a Twitch style play where you're actually going like as a platform, full stack, connecting direct between consumer and creator. There's a lot of middleware, stuff that was spawned by Patreon, a lot of sort of more like nuanced, I'd say, tool sets, everything from creation all the way to monetization. And so there's a lot of stuff going on in that layer. I'm seeing more the copycats going into Web3 these days. I'm just very immersed in this world, so I have a little bit of a biased view. I do have a biased view, but there's a lot of people trying to do that replication now, right? Taking the Instagram, the Twitter, the LinkedIn, the Facebook, the Twitch, the YouTube, and transporting that into the Web3 world. Web3, not necessary for the core user experience, really. It's really more about efficiency of transactions, basically, in that world. I think what's difficult in the creator space right now for those middle layer companies is it's a race to the bottom on margin. And so it's harder and harder to eke out money. The beauty of the creator industry is because you can go direct, you cut out, not only do you democratize creation and sort of fame, but you do cut out a lot of middlemen, traditional middlemen, managers, PR people, publicists, agencies, and so on. And so now these platforms now roughly take 10% and increasingly smaller. And so it does make it difficult. So you have to hit pretty massive scale to build a meaningful business. But it is a fascinating space. I think no better time to be a creator. I predict what Michael said before about engineers sort of being left in the dust in the decade plus funding mechanism. You're starting to see that with artists now. Artists, creators are getting that funding. They're getting smarter about building real brands and businesses around themselves, which includes in many cases building technology, although more rare. It's more the traditional media style of business is starting to really take off, and you're starting to see funding really flow towards these projects and these creators that are building in the Web3 world. And so I think the traditional creator now is coming up one level and be able to access this different level of funding than they were previously.
Hey, Jason, I apologize. I've got a hard stop at 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, ditto.
Just real quick. There's one last question. I think that's worth for you both just a quick answer. Austin, a good friend of mine, asking to Michael and Kevin, how do you guys deal with founder burnout and stay motivated? Maybe just one quick minute answer to that. Michael?
Work with people you like on a problem you like and help users you like.
Great.
That is exactly it. Like if you surround yourself with like-minded people who you trust, again, who you can fight and debate and go tooth and nail and figure out the best thing to do, there's no better feeling. And get help, right? If you need therapy, if you need coaching, like this is all normal for founders. Like you need this stuff. You need these outlets. And so it's no shame in that. But yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Michael and Kevin. It's been such a blast having you two and talking to the audience in Taiwan and around the world. We will post this interview on the Meet Global English website. It's meet-global.bnext.com.tw, and there's also going to be information on the LinkedIn, Meet Global and the Bnext, and also this recording will be uploaded to YouTube as well. Thank you again. Huge thanks to Kevin, Bnext, 数位时代, and Meet Global, and those who are listening. And as Michael and Kevin said, just apply, for YC. You never know, maybe you'll be the next Airbnb, Twitch, or Dropbox. So here's to a great session, and we hope to see you again soon next time. Thank you again, Kevin.
Thanks, Jason. See you later.
Okay. Bye, guys. Bye.